The title of this one is Our Past Surpassing. How about a great word play that? Our past surpassing. Now, the reason I wrote this is because a lot of people at this time of year have a natural tendency to reflect on what's gone on in the year that's gone by. I don't tend to do this too much because I reflect on everything whenever it comes up. But I have noticed that most people don't. However, it led me to believe that most people, when they do reflective thinking at the end of a year, everything that they try to change, it doesn't really change because they've waited a whole year to deal with it. Whereas, we kind of deal with things right away like you guys do. However, you're going to be ministering to people who often are in that type of thinking, you see. So there is a very positive type of way to look at the past, and there's a very destructive way to look at the past. We're going to see both, okay? Because a lot of people get very, very morbid and stuck in the past. I've done it myself, and I'm sure most of us have, and we've realized that it's an unprofitable place to be in. However, what was the springboard to this is I remember so many years ago in Zim, probably even 30 years ago now, I woke up in the middle of the night with tears on my face, and I was absolutely devastated by a dream I'd had, and I just woke Judy up, and I said, Judy, let's just pray because the Lord has shown me something that happened some years back that really, really, really hurt. And I said, well, what I did about it was I buried it because, you have to go to work, you got to function, you got to keep the money coming in, you got to, life doesn't just stop because you get hurt. So anyway, we prayed, and then that got out the way. And I thought about it. I thought, well, there's an unhealthy something in the past where I actually denied it. I was in complete denial. Denial doesn't work, first of all. So then another time, now I'm going to give you a positive look at the past with these are just anecdotes just to kick it off. I'm in the car with my mom in Indiana because I took my kids to meet their extended family in the Midwest, you see, because they wouldn't have any chance of meeting them otherwise. So I'm in the car with my mom and my daughter. Now Jenny's winding me up right now. She's getting. Now I'm going out.
She's 15 and she's pretty and she's being a brat.
I'm going to start going out with boys, and I'm saying you want their death warrant signed, you just do it. I'm dad, and I'm not playing now. You aren't going out with boys, end of. And then mom chimes in. She says, oh, this is so rich. You talking all your saint stuff. And I remember when you were Jenny's age, you were with anything that had a skirt, you were after it. And I said, okay, Mom, that is valid and true. But, B-U-T, but, conjunction, joining word, meaning something's going to follow. That man died in 1986. He's dead. He's buried, and there's no way he's going to come back to life. That man's dead. And I said, you're right, that person did do that stuff, but that's not me anymore. So that was what I class as a very healthy look at the past. Yeah, that was my past. But that's not at all who I am now, you see. So, are you ready to kick off? Psalm 103, verse 2. Very short one.
Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits.
Okay, forgetting not his benefits. One of the things that we really should do when we struggle with something that's happening in our life and we don't know where God fits in all this, and we sometimes can't even feel him close to us. Grief does that sometimes, or strife, it'll do that sometimes. And remember what he has done, because he has done so many things. And he's going to do something in the situation that you find yourself in as well. It's just that there's a reason why he's not doing it now. Because what is more powerful? When something just sits there with the yeast and the sugar in it and the fruit juice, or when it ferments for a year. When it ferments for a year, it's got some potency. I'm making an example with wine there, but and you won't have to wait a year. God doesn't torture people, but he is going to step in. When he does step in, he will do exactly what is necessary at exactly the right time, at exactly the right place, with exactly the right people. So this is why we remember his good, what does it say? His
benefits.
Benefits. Okay, so it's bienfait en français. I'm not thinking in French tonight. So now let's get this. So that's a really good look, a good snapshot at what's a good look at the past. Now let's go for Genesis. This is a good one. Genesis 19, verses 24 to 26.
When the Lord rained brimstone of fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens, so he overthrew these cities, all the plain, all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground. But his wife looked back behind him, and she became a pillar of salt.
Okay, so the question is, why was Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt? What was it about her attitude that made her the object of God's punishment? First of all, what would we do? If we're looking back, we could be looking back the same way that the Hebrews did when God led them out of the promised land, and they kept talking about, well, we want to go back to Egypt where there's leeks and onions and all this other, and God freed them from horrific slavery that lasted for 430 years. So that could be one reason why Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt, maybe ungrateful or something like that. That's a possibility. Another one is sometimes, when you're on the road and there's an accident, you see people rubbernecking because they have a morbid fascination with something that is just happened and newsworthy, and even if it's bloody and gory, I don't know, people look after the sensational. I don't know, that could have been a possibility. However, another possibility that Judy brought up this morning was the angel distinctly told her not to look back. Okay, so that has to have something to do with it as well. Now, keep in mind, we can say, well, Sodom and Gomorrah, boy, why did God destroy all of them? Well, it's because it was unredeemable. The same reason why he did the flood, because there was no possibility of redemption. If there was even a thimbleful of possibility that redemption and restitution could have happened, God would have made it happen. He wouldn't have done that unless there was absolutely no choice. So God informed Lot and Abraham of when he was going to do it, why he was going to do it, and where he was going to do it. So he moved them out, Abraham and Lot.
Which also shows that he looks after people who are redeemable. He took them out. He took Lot out of Sodom and Gomorrah. He took Noah out. He had him build a boat, so he was saved. He takes his people out of a situation which is going to be catastrophic.
And ladies, this is an exciting thought that just came to me. Has he not also taken us out of places that were not good for us? He's done it with you, me, Judy. He's done it with all of us. He's taken us out of horrid situations that even though we even maybe would have stayed in them because better the devil you know type thinking. Yeah, I mean, I do it too. I don't like change. I don't like completely disorientating myself and having a new reality come to me. But I also realize that maybe he's saving my life. Maybe he's saving the lives of my children, my students. You see, I never forget there was an evangelist that I used to go and see from Mauritius. When I was in Zim, I'd go down to Bulawayo and fellowship with him. And I told him, well, Pastor, I'm kind of struggling with what God's doing here on this particular situation. He said, listen, Larry, one thing you've got to understand, everything that God does or allows to have happen has something to do with your salvation and the depth of your relationship with him. Everything has to do with that. Your salvation and the getting closer to with a deeper relationship with the Lord our God. And I thought about that. I thought, I like that. That just really feels true. So let's go now to John chapter 9. We'll do verses 1 to 5. We're going to do the whole chapter, but we're just going to do an overview. Now, again, I repeat this again, is that I am going to take this jewel and I'm going to turn it a certain way and have us see certain things. but there is a huge amount of depth in this scripture that we're going to read and in every scripture that we read.
As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus. This happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming, when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world.
Okay, now this is a kind of a side issue, taking me away from the idea of the past, that it's setting the scene is what it's doing. Because here's this blind man, and what are the disciples thinking? Well, who sinned? Who did the nasty sinning that this man is this way? Now, we have a default kind of mentality because of the sin in the world that we tend to think if someone is not blessed, that they did something awful to deserve it. When we see somebody maybe in jail or I don't know, in a bad situation where he must have done something to deserve it. Or when someone is hugely blessed, we tend to think, well, I must have done something right. It is a kind of a default position. The only problem is Jesus was absolutely brutal against that attitude. He hated legalism. And he says, well, he's actually saying the same thing as I said about this pastor a moment ago. He says it's so that the works of God can be displayed and shown for what they are. Okay, so it's not that this man sinned. It's so that he can be healed. Again, we see the heart of God, don't we? Now, some of the things we can see is that in the epistles, the Apostle Paul has two main battlegrounds. One is false teachers, and the other is legalism. Those two take up enormous space in the New Testament doctrine, okay? So that means it's very, very important. Okay, so now we can move on from then. The man is not guilty of anything. He's just born blind. Now, keep in mind what the ramifications are of that. He does not have the right to go in the temple because he has a defect. He does not have any kind of job because what's a blind man going to do as a job in that kind of agrarian society? Would be very difficult, wouldn't it? So he's an outcast. The only thing he can do is sit and beg alms, and which he does. So now let's go for verses 6 and 7.
After saying this, he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing.
Okay, now it's really interesting because this is simply the act of healing the blind man. Notice one thing about healing is that Jesus never did it the same way twice. Because he never wanted us to make a method out of healing. He never wanted us to say, oh, this is the procedure. This is my owner's manual. This is my, what do you call it? My job description thing. You know what I mean? This is my method. Every time he healed, it was different. Why? Because every time he healed, it was someone different. And it was someone with different infirmities. Now, another thing that we have to see is that many so-called healers stick to this kind of method. They've got their punchline, they've got this, it's showmanship, they come on the stage, praise and worship, da-da-da, pray over you, da-da-da. They have this kind of method. Now, Jesus never invited multitudes to a venue for a healing session. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do it, but he never did it, so that makes me go, okay. It seems to me that if it was really valid, he would have done it, but he doesn't. Now, another thing, he didn't ever charge an entrance fee. Oh, he didn't charge an entrance fee. It was always organic and as per need, wasn't it? It was as per need of the moment, okay? So let's go to verses 8 to 12.
His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging said, Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Some claimed that he was, and others said, no, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I am that man. How then are your eyes opened? They asked. He replied, the man they called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash, so I went and washed, and now I can see. Where is this man? They asked him. I don't know, he said.
So something really, really huge has happened in this community. And at this point, the dialogues are relatively, at this time, the dialogues are relatively innocuous, because we're talking about people who are in his entourage, his neighbors, his acquaintances, perhaps his family and extended family, the people who know him, the people in his daily life. So at this point, they're just asking, well, what the blazes happened to you? And he just says, well, you know, this guy came and, you know, told me to put some spit and stuff and mud on my eyes and told me to go wash. And then I can see now. And, you know, right now, it's not in a bad place at all. It's just, let's get the facts. So let's go 13 to 17 now.
They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been blind. Now the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was a Sabbath. Therefore the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He put mud on my eyes, the man replied, and I washed, and now I see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. And others asked, how can a sinner perform such signs? And so they were divided. Then they turned again to the blind man. What have you to say about him? It was your eyes that he opened. The man replied, he is a prophet.
Okay, so we can see that now things start turning bad, and I'll tell you why. Because this man is no longer having an infirmity. So he is eligible for the temple, isn't he? He can come to the temple on the Sabbath, which he did. That's where he was. He was in the synagogue, or in the temple, doing the service, the weekly service, being in it. So the Pharisees are asking him, well, what happened, what happened, what happened? And you notice that they're not really interested in the facts. Can you notice that they don't really want to hear the truth? What they want to do is they want to twist the truth. So they start saying, oh, wait a minute, well, this guy healed you on the Sabbath, so he's not from God. And so then this starts a division, and now they're in trouble. You see, because they've got to spin the narrative in a different way, because they're trying to protect their power base, and this is affecting their power base, because half the people are saying, wait a minute, that doesn't ring true, because God doesn't hear sinners. To have the eyes of a man born blind opened, this has never been heard of. So I think that Pharisees, your explanation of the situation is not very good. Now, notice that they are trying to pull him back into the past continually, because they're trying to poke holes in his story. They're trying to find ways of negating it or making it so that it's not valid. Okay? Whenever I give my testimony, and this goes for you too, sometimes people will try to poke holes in it. They'll try to invalidate it. They'll try to say, well, you're just kind of dreaming about all this, aren't you? You're kind of making this up. You're kind of, making it into a belle histoire, a pretty story and all. I've had people say that because my conversion was quite a strong one, quite a unique one, you see. And I've had people say, well, I don't believe you. And I'd say, well, I don't care. That's fine with me. So if twisting the facts of the past wasn't enough, well, there we go. They were trying to make a pretext. Jesus is a sinner because he heals on the Sabbath. And the guy, and then they ask, what do you say about him? He's a simple guy. He's got to be a prophet, yeah. Because Elijah, Elisha, Samuel, they did miracles, yeah. So he says, well, he's a prophet. Okay. So let's go for 18 to 23.
They still did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight. until they sent for the man's parents. "Is this your son?" they asked. "Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it then that he can see?" "We know that he is our son," the parents answered, "and we know that he was born blind. But how he can see now, or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him. He is of age. He can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders, who already had decided that anybody who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That was why his parents said, "He is of age. Ask him."
So now notice that this man, now this is, remember the title of this, My Past is Past. Here's a man with a complete new lease on life. He can finally see, where all of his life prior to this, he couldn't see a thing. So obviously the entire array of possibilities of life now open up to this dear man. He sees that he can now start doing things. So, but the problem is the Pharisees, he's at the temple and I think he wants to worship God because he sees that God did a great miracle for him. But what are they doing? They're trying to pull him back into his past. They're trying to keep him there, and not only that, they're trying to keep him there so that they can bring him down, so that they can diminish him and ridicule him and put him under their power. Notice that they use two devices that the devil always uses: intimidation and manipulation. Manipulation in the respect that at the end of what we just read, he said his parents and everyone else were told, well, if anybody confesses Jesus to be the Messiah, or probably even a prophet, they put him out. Put him out the temple. Okay. Now, if you're put out the temple, then you get no more business contacts. You get no more jobs. You get no. Everybody shuns you. You are an unbeliever. You are apostate. You are not to be spoken to. Okay. And everybody banded together and did this. A very unholy huddle. Which is why Jesus did what he did in John chapter 8 with the adulterous woman. He put them all dead to rights. Such a beautiful passage. Let the one who's never sinned throw the first stone, and I want to see you do it. Beautiful. He didn't say that, but I can imagine he's, Anyway, I'm making that bit up. Don't take that on board. I just kind of like it when the bullies get unbullied. I just like it. Okay, so now the next thing is his parents. It's a shame. I find it a shame that his parents were so cowardly. I would have stood up and said, okay, this is my son. And if he says that it's something that happened to them, this is what happened. I would have
stood with him.
I would have stood with him. I'm sure we, our loved ones will stand by them. Okay, now let's go 24 to 34. Now it gets fun.
A second time, they summoned the man who had been blind. "Give glory to God by telling the truth," they said. "We know this man is a sinner." He replied, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know. I was blind, and now I see."
Okay, I want to stop there just for a second, but you can see how beautiful simplicity is. This guy's not a scholar. He's not he didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge. He just says what he sees. Well, wait, okay. I don't know what you're saying, but I do see that my eyes are open and I can see now. Okay, carry on from 26.
Then they asked him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered, "I have told you already, and you do not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?"
Okay, stop. Yeah, I love this. I don't know if he did the sarcasm on purpose. I believe he did because he knew that they were just doing it out of envy and jealousy. And it's just, again, such beautiful simplicity. He just, you want to be his disciple too? Okay, 28.
I actually don't think it was sarcasm.
Do you not think so?
No,
Go carry on.
because if you think about it, he had been blind all his life. He didn't know.
Yeah, I don't see this guy as hugely socially skillful or an orator. So I
think
would,
he was just saying
yeah,
the
he would
first
just
thing
say,
that comes into, like a child.
yeah. Well, would you like to be his disciple too? Okay. All right. 28 to, yeah, go. 28.
Then they hurled insults at him and said, "You are this fellow's disciples. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from." The man answered, "Now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." To this they replied, "You are steeped in sin from birth. How dare you lecture us?" And they threw him out.
Okay, now I'm just thinking of another time element. Notice though that they keep trying to pull him back into the past with the desire to ruin his narrative, to ruin what he's saying. Okay, but he's thinking in the future. He's saying, "I got a life now. I want to go live it. I want to go see things. I want to do things. I want to walk here. I want to look at the mountains. I want to see the clouds and the trees and the animals and the stars. I want to live." And they're saying, "No, I want to put you blind again. I want to bring you back to before you were blind." He keeps intimating, "Well, I don't want to go back to that. I've already lived that." And then it's a beautiful thing because he says, "Here's the amazing thing. You don't know where he's from, but he opened my eyes." Again, just startling simplicity in a wonderful way. Just, it's like I've got this bottle in front of me. It's not a cow. It's not an armadillo, right? It's a bottle. I mean, and I agree with you, Judy, in that I don't think this was a man that was trying to be clever. Another thing, I believe also, but this is personal, I believe that there was a span of time that went by between the time when Jesus opened his eyes, then a certain span of time, not much, but some, then all of his acquaintances get together and they see that something's happened to him, and then again another span of time went by before he went to the temple. So I see this as a build-up. You see, not just one where it just went here to there to there to there. I think timing is important in this aspect because he goes to the temple. Why? Because he can, for the first time. So he goes there. Now, why is there such an uproar? Because this is a man that was always sitting outside the temple. Now he's not outside the temple anymore. He's inside the temple. So I believe that some time went by and there was a lot of this in the city of Jerusalem about this because look at, if someone is in our village and that happens to them, we know it within 5 minutes. Okay, call it the Bush Telegraph. It just goes.
Also that they've known him for all those years and they didn't want to see a change in him. They wouldn't accept a difference in him. He completely changed in front of them, but they were like, "No, we can't see it."
Well, go back to the story that Larry spoke of with his mother right in the beginning.
Yeah.
She knew her son as he was then. Now she's seeing him in the car with his daughter, but he's a changed person, but she doesn't want him to be a changed person. She wants to remind him of who he had been. And he was turning around and saying, "No, I'm not having that. That man's gone." And that's what this guy's saying. That man's gone. I'm not going back to that place of blindness.
Now, another thing that is coming into my mind that I think is very important is we always have to leave space for God to change people. Okay? He changed me dramatically, and I've seen him change you too as well, and my wife as well. Okay? Now, just a couple of points here. People who don't have faith won't be able to accurately discern the lessons of the past. Okay? Like my dear mother. She didn't understand the lessons that I had learned from the past. I had learned not to be lusty. I had learned not to sleep around. I learned that loyalty was something of great, great worth and price. And if I did not give a woman my loyalty, then I was not giving her that which she will thrive on. Women will thrive on loyalty, and women will be destroyed by disloyalty. So they can't do that. Now, some will try to pull you back into the past, but with their interpretation of it. So yeah, when they
probably funny.
when they bring you back into the past,
Really
they want to be
stupid.
the one who determines what the interpretation of that past is. You don't count. You're not important in the mix, are you?
It's so true.
Yeah. Okay. Now the next one.
It's called make believe, Larry.
Huh?
Yes.
Make believe.
Yes, that's very true.
Now the next.
Can.
Now a really good use of it would be using the past for instruction, like what we read out of Psalm 103. Remember his bienfaits, his benefits.
His benefits, the good things he has done.
Remember, so we're in a struggle period. Okay, I've been a Christian for 38 years. You've all been for some years. You go back and you say, okay, I know God did this then. I know he did this then. And you can actually earmark many, many places and times where God has done stuff in your life, you see. So that is very profitable. As a matter of fact, in the Old Testament especially, God tells us to do that. Teach your children, remember his wonderful deeds, throughout the generations. And the next one, don't live in something that you can no longer do anything about. Past is called the past for a reason. It's gone. Now, the only thing that you need to do is have a wise attitude towards the past. But certainly don't dwell in it, because you know that you have been given a new life. And right now, this moment now, I'm looking at 3 beautiful faces, okay? And these beautiful faces have futures. They have new life, new hope, intelligent, smart people ready to change the world, which you're doing. But you can't do it if you're being dragged back into the mud of your past. Remember that old line from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, huh? From the ashes of disaster grow the roses of success. Grow the roses, grow the roses, those rosy roses. From the ashes of disaster grow the roses of success.
Do you know, I've never heard that song before.
That's
but it's
fantastic.
Good.
It's really good.
It's good.
So your past is past.